Hello. What follows is a six-part first-person recounting of the life of Tom Acker. Father Tom, at the time of this video, was 92, and the video was made in May of 2022. His life is a fascinating journey through several countries, including Nepal. Along the way, Father Tom Acker of the Society of Jesus has been president of 2 universities. He is a scientist with a doctorate in biology from Stanford University. He has been consulted by the highest levels of 2 governments. His outlook, competence, and attitude toward his tasks have earned him a lot of love and respect by many of the people who he's come in contact with. At every turn, though, from the earliest age, as you'll see, he has been the problem child for many of his superiors. When we met, he was serving as a parish priest and busy saving a failing parish school, which he then revived and caused it to blossom where it had been on its last gasp. Toward the end of these videos, he calls me his friend. I am very proud of that designation. I should mention I'm not Catholic. My work involving sound and video systems brought me into contact with hundreds of pastors and priests and some imams and rabbis. I have met some outstanding people who have taken up the work that they see God has called them to, and Father Tom is such a person. Please enjoy with me the story of Father Tom Acker of the Jesuits. So we're here today speaking to Father Tom Acker about his life as a Jesuit, and it's been a long life. Father Tom, how old are you today?
Well, I'm 92.
92.
Pushing on 93.
Well, that's wonderful. So we're going to begin, and let's start at the point in your life when you entered the Society of Jesus. When and why did that happen?
Wow. That's an interesting question because it was a struggle question. I went to a little school called St. Ignatius High School, and I played football with him. It's a great little school. I also dated a lot. I enjoyed dating. I dated girls from St. Joseph's Academy, from St. Augustine's Academy, from Lourdes Academy. And, but there was always something in my mind, what's next? What's next? And Steve, I remember walking out of the theater, Beach Cliff Theater in Rocky River, with Joan Bundy. I remember her name. And my arm was around her, and all of a sudden, I was a junior at that time in high school, and all of a sudden a thought came to me, you're going to be a priest. And I said, what an inopportune moment to bring this up. God's a funny God. He catches you at moments you least expect.
True enough.
Anyway, I knew that I would have to look into this. I wanted to go to college, and then I thought, well, I love adventure. I love to risk. And so I looked into, I went to a priest whose name was, not a priest, he was a seminarian, but he was teaching at that time as part of our training. Said, I might want to enter the Maryknolls. And he was very helpful to me. He was a Jesuit scholastic before a priest. And he encouraged me and gave me all this stuff. But then I realized, hey, I don't know anything about the Maryknolls. I think I'd like to become a Jesuit. So I remember the day I walked into Father O'Brien's thing. It was kind of an interesting thing. I was the head of the yearbook. And I got angry one day with a man by the name of Tom Spittler. And we got into a fist fight. And I threw him out. And Mel Karen, who was the moderator, said to me, "You can't work here any longer. You'll have to find another office to do your work in." And
this is when you were in high school.
I was in high school. And so I went. I never talked to my mom and dad about this. We were brought up to be very independent little cusses. My two sisters, both older. And so I went to Father O'Brien and I said, "I'm thinking of becoming a Jesuit." And he said, "Well, you come back to me in a week and let me know what you've made your mind up." And so I went back. I still remember it was the Feast of St. Joseph, March the 19th. And I said, "I want to become a Jesuit." And he said, "Okay, here's what you have to do." So I had to go through 3 interviews and had a physical exam. Never told my parents. Never told my parents a bit. And then one day when my two sisters came from college, one was in Erie, Pennsylvania, the other one in Mount St. Joseph's in Cincy, I announced that I was going to enter the Jesuit order. And it was quite a scene. Quite a scene. Like all mothers, Mother's Day coming up on Sunday, mothers always, they knew something was going on. Mom did. And she ran out and looked at her calendar and she said, "When did you make the decision?" I told her, "On the Feast of St. Joseph." And she said, "I just looked at the calendar. I finished a special prayer of Novena on the Feast of St. Joseph." The answer. Mom and Dad were not that close. Dad knew something was going on. So he, typical male, by the way, goes to Little Sisters of the Poor and gave them a donation and they wrote him back after they got the donation and said, "You'll have the answer on the Feast of St. Joseph." Oh my gosh, I've got that letter.
So what year was this?
This was 1947.
Okay.
So that's, you say, what do I do now? So you enter the Jesuit order. You go down to Milford. 2 or 3 other of my classmates went down. It was rather blah. I have to admit it was rather blah. There were about 30 of us that were going to enter the Jesuit order. And you go through what they call a novitiate of 2 years. And that was blah. I was supposed to learn something about spirituality, something about all types of things. I was more interested in birds. You had to read a book. It was called Rodriguez, 3 volumes of it. And after you finished it, you had to read it again. It was awful. Steve, it was awful. And I used to go reading outside with this book. And someone reported on me. They said, "I don't think he's reading his book. He's watching birds." And that's what I did. Well, after 2 years, then you take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Now, I would be, at that age, I would be 20. You turn over all of your possessions if you have any. Poverty. Obedience, you do what you're told. Chastity, dating is out, nothing to do. And then you start your college, what they call junior aid. And I really didn't enjoy it. It was a lot of Latin, a lot of Greek, history, and so on. And somewhere along the line, after about a year of that, they said, "What would you like to do? What would you like to do? You've got to go into something." And I said, "I think I'd like to go into biology." "Well, have you ever had a biology course?" "Nope." "Why do you want to go into biology?" I said, "I lived on the edge of the Metropolitan Park system as a young boy in a barn." People say, "Well, you act like you were brought up in a barn." And I was. Ours was an old converted barn right on the edge of the valley. And I always loved walking in the valley and studying, watching birds and so on.
So this was the Cuyahoga Valley, or
Metropolitan Park, Rocky River.
Rocky River. Okay.
Rocky
So
River.
Cleveland area.
Cleveland area. Right on the edge of the Hilliard Road Bridge. But in going to high school, I had to work. I worked in the Fred service station right down the road as a gas attendant. Gasoline was 25 cents a gallon.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good, huh? 25 cents a gallon. Well, anyway, I was in the novitiate and then in the juniorate. And they said, well, tell us the 3 things that you'd like to do. I said, well, I'd like biology. If I can't do that, maybe I'd like to become a lawyer like my father, or maybe I'll go into mathematics. Well, after 2 years of that, they shipped us off to a little place called West Baden, Indiana. French Lick. It's right next to French Lick. And you know of someone from French Lick, Larry Bird. The great. I used to say that I taught him how to play basketball, but that's a pure lie. A pure lie.
Well, it's good for lies to be pure, at least. Huh?
It is. Anyway, they said to me, well, you're going to go in mathematics. I said, okay, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And they said, we don't need biologists. Well, I got good advice and wrote to 3 or 4 Jesuits who were biologists. And they said, of course we need biologists. So I gave that to the Dean of Studies, and he said, okay, you've never had a biology course in your life. I was now basically 22 years old. And so they sent me off during the summer when the other people had recreation or had time off, sent me to Fordham for a course in biology. And the word was, you take this 8-credit course in biology. If you get an A, maybe we'll consider it further. If you don't get an A, doesn't matter. What happens when they give you choices like that? You get an A, don't you? That's what you do. So I got an A. And I came back, and then you went through philosophy. And I was getting a degree, a Bachelor of Arts degree. And they said, well, next summer you're going to take some chemistry, because you'll need some chemistry. So I went off and did some chemistry at St. Louis University and came back. Everyone else had vacation. I had to work. A very hot summer. The temperature went up to 118 degrees that summer, twice. You couldn't do a project with ether. The ether would evaporate before you got it done. And came back, and then they said, well, next summer you're going to take a course in physics. Why physics? Well, because you'll need physics, and you're going to teach a year of physics at Loyola High School in Chicago. So that's what I did. I took up my first course in physics. I had a course in physics in St. Ignatius, and then they sent me off to teach physics for 1 year at Loyola University, Loyola High School, and that's what I did. And then they said, okay. After 1 year, you now go to Fordham University and get your undergraduate biology. So I did. I went to Fordham University, and I took a whole bunch of courses in undergraduate biology to pick something up. And the head of the biology department was a priest, Father Berger. And at the end of the year, he said, you can't continue here. You're a seminarian, and I don't want a seminarian to get a doctorate in biology from a Jesuit school. You've got to pick another school that you want to go to. It's a non-Jesuit school. And so I chose Stanford. And he said, I think you can get in. And I did. I got into Stanford.
So what year is it now?
Wow. I have to think about what year it is now. Gosh, I graduated from Stanford in 1960, about 1956, I guess. About 1956.
Well, just to clarify, I was 3.
It was what?
I was 3 years old.
Oh, you were 3 years old. Well, what happened there is a very interesting situation. How did I get in Stanford? Well, I had one course in entomology, in insects at Fordham, and the teacher was the worst teacher I've ever had. So I had to work like a dog to learn entomology. So when I applied to Stanford, I applied to go into entomology. And there was a professor there whose name was Gordon Ferris, a noted entomologist, worked with scale insects. And he wanted a graduate student. So they accepted me as his graduate student. And it was very surprising because when I went to meet him, he was about 65 years old, and he said, "This is the strangest thing I've seen. I'm an atheist, or an agnostic." And he said, "My last graduate student is a Jesuit priest." But I wasn't a priest. I was a seminarian. But he said, "Let's see what we can do." And so he was a wonderful man. I'd be very, very close to him and very close to his wife. And so we had to figure out a dissertation. Stanford was tough, though, because now I had to take a whole bunch of biology courses, advanced courses, and then you have, finally, at the end of a year, you take what they call a preliminary exam to see whether they're going to let you stay up with the doctorate. You have no choice. You either pass or you leave. Very simple. And so 5 of us passed and 5 did not. And so I went on.